Our next panel discussion is on economic betterment and women in entrepreneurship. The panel will again be moderated by Ms. Shaili Chopra, and I'd like to invite our panelists now to take their seats. Ms. Harini Kalamur, former digital editor, DNA. Ms. Nidhi Agarwal, founder and CEO of women's wear portal Karya. She'll be with us in just a moment. Ms. Shrishti Arya, founder Rose Audio Visuals, also on her way. And Mr. Puran Chandra Pandey, executive director, UNGCNI.
Thanks very much. Can you guys hear me?
Can we get Shaili's mic on, please?
Yeah, can you hear? I think they're up in the elevator. Yeah. Should we just wait for them? Yeah, I think that would. I just wanted to say that our other two guests got lost in the lane behind, so they're on the way up on the elevator. Meanwhile, perhaps you could just get your cups of tea and sit here as well. We're just waiting for a few seconds. Yeah. Yeah, my team is on the ground in there waiting to pull them out of their cars and yank them up here. But, no, I just spoke to the gentleman who represents her. They are all team members here. They themselves are here. Yeah, they could have got some other team members to be here. So that's, in fact, that's what that guy, he's from Karya. So he's been speaking to her for some time about the route. Avinash, do you have any word from her? Apparently, okay, we're going to begin this discussion because we expect Shrishti to find the BSc, and she'll be here as well as Nidhi Agarwal shortly. But the most important thing for me is that the two panelists who are sitting here actually come with a massive wealth of experience. So Puran Pandey, we've been talking about, you know, he's already given you the big picture of the effort that they're putting in with the UN. And Harini Kalamur is not only a filmmaker, a creative person, she understands digital. She's headed digital for the entire Z Media group and really reinvented that over the last few years. And my other two panelists as they come in. Puran, we had a very exciting discussion in the previous panel about gender equality, and one of the things that really, you know, I'm extremely passionate about is this whole piece about economic empowerment. It's a game changer. Share with me what you feel about how economic empowerment is really the key today to change the future of women.
Thank you, Sally, and I am very happy that I am the only person in the middle of the two women. And Sally and I had the privilege of working with the same company at some point in time. And then she also has been with a part of media. So we will bring some perspectives which could be common and quite a few could be a little differentiated and unique. I have always held the view that anything that you try and propagate, try and spread awareness about, or try and ask people to follow through, or make people see some sense into what they ought to be doing, I think there has to be a business case to it. When I say there has to be a business case, which also means that there has to be an economic angle to it. And this is not only true in case of women empowerment in the context related to that. This is as much true in our lives as well. And therefore, economic empowerment is something which I feel is the fulcrum of the whole issue. It is not all about 75th Amendment. It is not all about 7 principles that the UN Global Compact and the UN Women have built over the last few years. It is not all about MDGs and SDGs. It's not about the transition from one to the other. It is all about economic empowerment. How do you really build a business case? How do you really try and empower people wherever they are? And this is what I refer to very briefly when I opened the thing in the morning, I said, it is up to each one of us, and at all layers, leaving no one behind, and collective. You and I cannot really do everything. And let's go back to our houses. I remember my mother being a housewife, my father going and earning the money for the rest of the family. And then I was born in a family where I had all my sisters, and I grew in that kind of an atmosphere. So you sort of need to see as to how do you really, whatever you do, you just bring in a business case to it. And it applies rather more in case of women empowerment. You'll see it at home, you'll see it in the companies, you'll see it in the communities. That any woman who is economically empowerment is the woman who is respected at home. It's not about bringing money to the household and then spending that money in a much more vigorous way or in a much more meaningful way. It is all about who brings the money in at the home. And therefore, leave aside political empowerment, leave aside empowerment of the home. It all centers around economic empowerment. And I think when we are talking about this economic enterprises and economic empowerment for the woman, we must remember three things. One, it is not really the part of the four walls of the household that we live in. Not at all. It is not only the part of the community that we belong to. It is also not the part about discussing global and local connect from MDG transition to the SDG. It is all about how do we really empower our women folks, whether they're at home or outside, in a more economic way. And business sense, therefore, is something which has been very, very important. And if you really look at the countries in the west of the Europe and compare them with India, you'll really find a very, very hard business case being sold in those countries in the global north. Those things are happening in India, but in a, not all at one go, but they're happening in bits and pieces, and we need to really ensure that wherever we are, we need to see that, that business case is built, women are empowered, and they really bring then a lot of contribution to the household, to the companies they work within, and also when they go out, they become more collective in their approach.
As you said, it should be a business imperative, and I love that. And this is perfect time for me to introduce the two panelists we've been waiting for with bated breath. The reason for that is that everybody is so excited to hear the story of Srishti Harya and the way she's built Rose Audiovisuals. She knows the fabric of that film industry, and she's really made a big difference, almost entrepreneurial. Karya.com's founder is Nidhi Agarwal. She's also really had a very challenging start because she went up to over 137 investors before she could find her first. So really a big round of applause to our entire panel getting together here. And thank you all for coming back in after your brief tea breaks. So, Srishti, on to you, talking to you first on this issue. As he said, it's a business imperative, and I hear you on Twitter, I hear you on various panels that you are on. There's this absolute requirement for people to start saying, I am not even thinking about the fact that getting women on board is economic sense. How have you built your entrepreneurial space, and where did you think that actually shone?
I apologize for being late.
No, don't worry, you're good.
It's been quite a ride. I've been working for the last 25 years, and I've actually seen the fabric change, especially in my business, which is anyway a rather disorganized kind of a sector where you don't have, people don't trust us anyway, and trust the women even less. So raising any money is like a nightmare. And unfortunately, the trend has always been such in my business that when I became a producer, everybody they'd look at me and think I was the costume stylist because I was young and a little more attractive. And they just assume there's certain jobs that women can do. And now when you say that, no, I'm the producer, and they just look at you and say, really, you, kid, woman, I'm supposed to take orders from a woman? Earning their faith is earning the faith of your crew, of the people who work with you is different. Earning the faith of people to invest in you is a nightmare. I've been to meetings where I have a younger brother who works with me, and they'd ask the questions, and I'd have the business plan laid out, and I'd know how the spending is done, and he's a creative guy. And they would still ask me the question, ask him the question, I would respond, then they would reply to him with the next question. I don't know what it is, because you see women every day, and they keep delivering day on day on day, but somehow when it comes to investing in women, there's a serious resistance.
Haruni, you've had a diverse career. You've been a great observer of how the entire piece around gender has at least changed in terms of dialogue. Digital democracy has come through. We're talking about entrepreneurial piece taking center stage. Do you see these shades still around?
Oh, of course, yes. I mean, the number of times I've been asked, "आपके मिस्टर कहाँ हैं?" It's not funny. I mean, मेरे मिस्टर नहीं है. तो आप business खुद चलाती हो? हाँ, कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती है. I mean, this is so normal. This is so par for the course. It's not funny. And as Shrishti is putting it, in the film industry, despite the fact that we talk about the fact there's tremendous gender equality, there's tremendous equality when it comes to financing, it's the same problem all over again. Oh, आप खुद distribute करोगे? कैसे करोगे? I mean, हो जाएगा kind of thing. But I'll tell you a story about this, and it is changing, and it's changing at the grassroots, which is far more interesting. When I first quit my corporate job, my first stint of corporate life is 2003, and I got into a ST bus and I went off to make a documentary in Marathwada. So I was working with this NGO which was working with Dalit and Pardi women, and they'd got these women into a self-help group. And these women, as part of the self-help group, each got a female goat. Okay, they saved up enough money and they got a female goat from the NGO. And before you know it, that single goat had become 370 goats within 1 year. So if you look at it as growth in capital, in 3 years they had a 370 time growth in capital, which is phenomenal by any business standard. So in the 4th year when I met them, I was asking them, what are you going to do next? They said, अब हमारे पास पैसे आए हैं, हम अपने बच्चों के लिए स्कूल खड़ा करेंगे. Now when we talk about economic empowerment, it's actually about the choices that we make and where we choose to put money. Okay? Sometimes when you look at a corporate structure which is still terribly male driven, okay, banking, finance, investment, infrastructure, if you look at it, if you find a woman there, she's usually the secretary. Okay? And if you find a woman there, just applaud her because she has got there no matter what. It's not so bad in the media, but in the remaining sectors, it's still pretty bad. So when you look at businesses that women want to start with a gut instinct, because there's nothing that has happened before, okay, because nobody has seen your need before, then you will always have a problem in terms of finding funding for it. And therefore, what might help, really speaking, is to talk to other women as funders. I think it's very important while we are getting there and building businesses, it's also very important for us to turn investors. Because we understand at a very basic level something may work because we are wired to it. It may not be a feature film, it may not be a bridge, but there are certain businesses that are women specific, which women are thinking through now as a needs gap because it doesn't exist. And it will really, really help if there's an investment committee, outlet there, which is driven by women and which funds these priorities, not because these are women, but because they think it makes great business.
That gives me a perfect segue because Karya.com has actually seen an investment from a women-led fund as well. And it's been quite a fascinating story for them as they try to raise their first round of funding. And I'm not the one who's going to tell you that. Nidhi is going to actually narrate that story.
Well, Karya did go through its, let's say, tough time for the 365 days that we did seek funding and did not get funded. We made close to 113 pitches. All of them ended in a no for multiple reasons. Don't know which one of those reasons were because you were a single woman founder. But I guess what I'm also trying to say is that finally the funding did come in through Mr. Ratan Tata, Mr. Mohan Das Pai and the Saha Fund. Now the Saha Fund is a woman-owned, woman-led fund. Ankita Vasishta leads that fund. And to her, when I was talking about the problem statement, it didn't even need articulation because she understood it. Karya is going after that busy woman with a busy lifestyle who wants Western wear, which is not trading off between comfort and fashion. So from that point of view, our sizing was a very large value proposition, which was an instantaneous click in the really large unmet need that existed within India with Ankita. So she didn't even have to go through a pitch document because it was just so intuitive for her. And just by virtue of that, 2 conversations, 1 visit to the factory, and the deal was closed. It was as simple and quick as that. Now compare the 365 days to these 2 meetings and 1 visit, and it was, you know, so to your point, it's exactly that. It's the articulation and the ability to understand without articulation also.
But as an entrepreneur, do you think that one of the things that you thought would set you apart was the fact that you were economically empowered? Why do you think it took so many investors to see that as the real positive to go after?
So, you know, Shelley, I would always say that perhaps there was a lot of learning that I had to undergo in terms of articulation of the business process, right? So certainly my first pitch and the last pitch didn't look alike at all. So I think we went through a learning phase. But aside from that, to convince somebody that the need actually existed meant understanding it from the consumer's point of view. Now, if you're not a woman in India consuming Western wear in India, you probably don't understand it like that. Number 2, I think very rarely would you come across a single founder company. And number 3, very rarely would you come across a single woman founder company. So I don't know which one of these was actually ticking the wrong box. But it could be any of these reasons, or it could be maybe the differentiation of the product was not articulated. Again, you know, kind of going back to the ability to understand the product and the unmet need.
Srishti, after so many years of successful films and building this you know, property called the Rose Audiovisuals with your brother, how do you think has people's approach changed towards you?
Oh, it's day and night at the moment, especially with the advent of television, because television really helped in the sense of everything got a little organized. The banks came in. It wasn't that just a funder who had to like your face. I mean, sure, I learned one thing, that when you want to raise money, you should wear a lot of diamonds. For some reason, they give you money if they think you have money. And you don't need the money if you have the money. But it always works like that. But today, obviously, there is a certain equity that one has managed to get, and I don't need to have a male with me to go to raise funds, and also the business itself has become a little more streamlined. But I see a lot of younger girls who come in. I see a lot of female producers who can't get their features off the ground. Yeah. And they just can't. It's not because they're not talented or their scripts are not good. First and foremost, people assume that because you're a female filmmaker, your interest is in promoting some strange agenda, especially if you're a woman who speaks up.
Right.
So they think, so this is not going to run from get-go. If Piku was to be made by a female filmmaker, it wouldn't have gotten off the ground. It's just
so are you trying to say they think it could come with like a layer of activism or something to that effect?
They just assume that because you're a female filmmaker, and I've been asked this so often, that how does it feel to be a female filmmaker? And I say, I feel like a filmmaker, not a female filmmaker or a male filmmaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and we can't, but you know, it's something that, sorry, but I'm just going to segue a bit, but it's something that, it's like a chicken and egg. Because what we show the kids, what we show people, especially, unfortunately, in my business itself, you know, you just keep propagating the same belief system again and again and again. You ask a director when he pitches a script to you and say, oh yeah, this girl, okay, what's her job? And he says, job? No, she goes to office. But the guy, you know exactly what he does.
Yeah. Very fascinating. Pooran, I'd like to pick your brains on this. Now, you know, we were talking earlier with Nishta as well, that the communication and the approach of media is really part of this story. How does the UN grapple with all of this as they try their messaging out? And what Srishti just said, that, you know, sometimes they just don't seem to get it. We live with these stereotypes and we're very comfortable in them.
Well, I mean, I would agree with the panelist point of view that journey never, whether it is for a man or a woman, is an easy one. If you got your first funding in 365 days, I would congratulate you on that. It takes some people 2 years, 3 years, they fail, they rise, they again come back and try and make a mark. I think I would commend your abilities to be able to get the first round of wealth from somebody as good as Ratan Tata and the rest of it. So if you spend 365 days and got the funding from some of these very fine people, your journey going forward becomes very, very easy compared to quite a few people who might have been trying it very hard with the bank and rest of it, et cetera, and they have never ever been able to get the funding. In any investment case, the guidelines are very simple. Will you be able to repay the money back? The rest of the things are non-issues. So anybody you go to a funder, you go to a bank, you go to a financial institution, they have to tick boxes. And I can tell you, it is not really about men or women. It is all about the tick boxes which these banks have. And they will probably say if you qualify 6 out of 10, you get the funding. And if you are 50-50, then it is in their own discretionary domain. And if it is 4 out of the 10, then you never get the money. So financing field is very, very complicated, very ruthless. People judge you not by who you are and what your abilities are, but by the tick boxes. And that thing has begun to change. But this will take some more time before we see some green shoots in that particular area.
Pooran, but I wanted to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to ask you that, when you look at this new rise of the whole startup world, the sense of, coming back of enterprise, entrepreneurship, do you think that that is a great way to cut some of that flab of the inability to bring that equality? Is this empowering women in a way that they can make a comeback into the economic system, or even an entry into the economic system, without having to go through what have been traditionally stereotypical routes that tend to prevent them from entering it?
No, absolutely. I mean, you're right, bang on there. And this is what you asked me in the first round of the question. How does UN sort of try to get that messaging out? You'll not really know, or I don't know how many of you will know really, that within the group, UN and the Global Compact systems, we have social impact investment as a stream, which is being driven by 500 leading banking institutions. And when we came up with 7 sort of principles with the UN Women in 2010, the whole world probably laughed and said, what are these 7 principles going to be doing? And that too with respect to the women empowerment and gender equality. You'll not believe, if you really look at those 7 sort of principles, these are the guideposts. They really talk about everything starting from the leadership change down to how the companies will report on what they've been doing with respect to the women empowerment and gender equality. And rest of it, between the first set of principle and the 7th set of principle, will be everything: training, capacity building, public policy approach to women empowerment, etc., etc. So there is already a change within the UN and change, therefore, at the rest of the places. What has not really been happening is twofold things. One, there are many things which are happening undercurrent. Not many people either know about it, or they are not really being told. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is, how do we really spread the awareness? How do we really use the medium of media? How do we really use people like the panelists sitting on this dais here, on this table here, and also see to it that we also try and build up some role models. I can tell you, if she took 365 days to raise the first bout of capital, and with her support, I can tell you, many young women entrepreneurs would probably cut that 365 days to maybe 65 days. And then the rest will cut down to 3 weeks and 2 days and rest of it. I think the first one is that how do you really build the messaging and pass it on? And how do you really build the role models who are ultimately going to help and support the rest of the women folks who are going to come and try and build the pitch in order not to get only the money, but also have a lot of people like them to be able to refer to the bank or the people who have the money and say, if I can do it, these people are in a much better position to be able to do what we have not been able to do it. So I think it is all about hand-holding, it is all about messaging. The role of the media becomes very, very important. But I can again come back to say that we will need to really build an economic imperative on whatever we are going to take forward and sell it off to anybody.
Right.
That is the key.
And I think that also is, one of the reasons why we wanted to theme that panel in that whole piece of gender equality is that it allows you to just get the red carpet. Economic strength is tremendous. Harini, in your own experience, as you said that while you've had to beat stereotypical questions, but what do you think has been the one winning story? What has been your biggest strength, you think, as you built yourself a career?
I think that most people that you work with or you pitch to are gender blind. They don't care. They care about what you can deliver or what you can't deliver. They don't really care. But you don't go there as abla aurat as well. Okay? You don't play gender. They don't look at gender either. And I think that's very, very important. I think what's also helped me a lot is that there have been women who are slightly older than me, maybe 10 years older than me, who have been very good mentors. Yeah. So have the men. Okay, it's my first boss, her husband, my father, okay, a whole bunch of both men and women who mentored you through that process. And today when I look back at younger girls, what I realize is that maybe what we require is some systematic way of mentoring. Okay, and it could be for girls, it could be for boys. I don't think we should really discriminate on that. But there is, especially when talent is now coming in from the smaller towns, there is no reference point for them as far as success is concerned. And I think that we need to organize and partake in a mentoring process which allows entrepreneurs to grow. Because I think Bombay, Delhi, Kolkata are pretty much saturated. Your next level of entrepreneurship is going to come from the rest of India, not the metros anymore. The other thing which will be very good for India, which was not there when I was starting up the first time, is incubation. How do you incubate ideas beyond the IITs or the premier institutes? How do you incubate ideas and see them through to a stage where they can get funded? Because here a lot of it is luck. Who do you know? Where can you go? How can you manage? What helped me was the fact that I worked 10 years in the media and I'd built up some amount of goodwill. But if I was 21 and starting an enterprise, it would have been a completely different ballgame. And a lot of people want to start up after college, which is a great thing. So mentoring incubation would really, really, really help. It helped, yeah.
Well, talking of incubation, I understand that even the BSc now has an incubator in this very building to encourage, innovation. Nidhi, what would you pick as your three prime, reasons that kept you going, especially in the side of the adversity, starting up?
Fundamentally, I think everybody in my team believes that if you're able to convince someone or you get convinced, right? There are only two ways to deal with this. So every time we got any feedback at all, we kind of crunched it up, figured out what it was that they were trying to say to us, did it have an impact on the way we were running business, and actually articulated it as feedback and imbibed it. But I think there were three things that we were completely convinced about. Number one, we were going to run a good business. There are no two definitions of a good business, right? A good business makes money. This was going to have to make money. So from that point of view, we sort of hit near break-even April 2014, all bootstrapped, right? Second, we were actually genuinely meeting an unmet need. Now, that automatically creates a pull in the market, and therefore you're not pushing just product, you're genuinely creating transactions that are alleviating a problem, and therefore a relationship is formed. And third, we weren't doing it just as everybody else did it. We were genuinely creating IP, not just on the tech front, but also on the product front. Not just on the product front, but also on the brand front. So we weren't doing it as everybody else did. We weren't doing what everybody else was doing, and we were certainly making money out of it. So there was something that was right, that was checking these three boxes, and these three boxes were the three boxes we continuously kept track of and checked.
Yeah. But who would you say came to support you, not in terms of funding, but in terms of philosophy, when you had a little bit of a question mark, is this going to fly?
So I remember when I thought of becoming an entrepreneur, the first person I approached was my father. He belongs to the corporate Indian world, and from that point of view, the first thing he said was, you'll need a group of people who can actually steer you, right? These are those people you give absolute space to, physically and mentally, who will actually pick you up, shake you up when you are flying too high, or pick you up and dust you when you've fallen really hard. So from that point of view, the first thing I did was pull together this base of mentors. So Harini, to your point, I had one mentor who used to be the APAC head of Airtel, who's an FMCG expert, one mentor who's an HR expert, so he was actually grooming me as a leader, a team member and a team manager. Then somebody who belonged to the private equity world who actually helped me understand the investor's point of view, and then of course my father, who knew me as a person and knew my aspirations as a woman as well, and how I had to straddle both. So I think these set of four men like totally stood up for me and like kept me going for that 1 year, no questions asked.
We can definitely say there was an element of he for she alive and throughout.
Well, just given how it has been so far. Now, had my mom also been a corporate person, I'm sure she would have been the one person. And not to say that she didn't support me, she totally did, right?
Yeah,
but,
that's not taking
but to
away
your
from
point,
Yeah.
it is the examples that are existing right now, which are actually male, which I looked up to. And to her point, it's not about woman or man. You just go to the person you connect with.
True. And you know something, Srishi, that Pooran was talking about earlier, that there's an immense role of role models, as well as finding stories of new role models. I mean, one of the things that we do at SheThePeople is to announce the new stories, you know, what people are doing and why they're doing and how they're achieving. Why is that, you think, becoming more and more relevant in a country that has been obsessed with these lists that have always had the same 10 faces?
I think it's important that people know that they're not alone in their struggles. That's the most important thing, because what happens is those top 10 lists, eventually, like you said, they remain the same, and they become untouchable. You know, they become something that's like a hero. Like, you don't really think that you can, you know, become Superman, but you may be able to become like the guy next door who made it. You know, so it's very important to keep telling these stories. I also think that in the mainstream that we have, it's very important to treat it very normally. You know, when you want to treat a woman the same as a man, we end up running the man down or having to make a great empowerment. I think it's very important to have casual empowerment, which we don't have.
Yeah.
That's a big lacuna for us.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that we've been discussing through this morning is that a reality check to things. So while what you're saying is to pick on both extremes, but at the same time, do you think that this piece about sharing of everyday struggles, that possibly is going to be equal to everyday empowerment as well?
I think we should share our successes because struggles, everybody has one. I think there's no bigger insult you can give a person than saying they don't know struggle.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles in their own way, but overcoming is a big deal, you know, and to know that you can make it. And it's just, you know, growing up, I started very young. My father passed away when I was 17, and I was the eldest. So I started working, and because he had an incomplete film. And this was just told to me recently, in fact, for a Women's Day thing. They were like, you know, write something about yourself. And I said, there's really nothing about me to write. And they were like, but you know, this happened. And I was like, yeah, but that was my life. That was my bit, you know, that came to me. And she told me, that lady, that you must say this to people, because when it happens to someone else,
Yeah.
they feel they're all alone. You know, it's like her story. You know, it's every single one of those 365 days, she needed to find some motivation to keep going out there.
True. Yeah,
You know?
indeed. Well, sure.
Which is this, that if you look at the personification of a successful female entrepreneur in fiction in India, she's not a very nice person. Okay, she's in fact quite a horrible person. You don't want to be anything like her. And I think at a certain level, if you're going to get a whole bunch of younger girls, 18, 21, 22, to get inspired, it'll really help to have good role models. And the biggest role models can be provided by fiction, because that's what people watch most. I mean, I may make the best documentaries on earth, it'll have 3.5 crores watching it. On the other hand, a film, a television soap, not even a feature film, a television soap that goes into your house 5 days in a week, I think really needs to have positive role models of both women and men who are supporting them, because there are some genuinely nice people in the world. Otherwise, we will be, I mean,
Hey,
we'll be
we're all
burning.
nice, okay?
We're
all nice. We're all nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get some questions from the audience and also get all of you to engage. Perhaps you could come up front a bit. Ladies at the back. I know you're all from the BSc. They're going to make an announcement here saying, everybody move up. Okay. Could we get the mics around? Yeah, question? Right there, please.
I think, I'm sorry, I think one thing that we always talk about is whether economic front goes ahead and then follows the socio-political development for women, or it is vice versa. So we would like to understand from the panel as to what has been their experience. Does it work this way, or any other view?
Well, there's nothing this or that or something else. Everything has got to be moving in parallel. See, we're all, born in a family. That is the first step to get emotionally stable, get a lot of support from father, mother, uncle, everybody else. I think your formative days are over by the time you step out of the home and go to the school or the college. Second thing is that you need education. You need to build yourself. You need to expand on your horizon. You need to network, connect with the people. And also use the time to excel, celebrate, win whatever you want to win, and create some kind of an automatic messaging around you, which goes out in the market much before you are out of the college or the school. Third thing is, when you have these two things, stability, which is both emotional and otherwise, and equipped with the right degrees and the right education, you are ready to move in. And this is where I personally believe, and this is what has already begun to happen if you go to any IITs or IIMs or tier 2 cities, best B schools and technical institutes. Boys and girls have already begun to leave lucrative jobs. And they have begun to experiment with the whole idea of what new can they really do, which is what C said. It is not only doing the business which helps you make more money, but also doing a business which means that you are also going to touch the lives of the people wherever you are. And therefore, the smart businesses are the ones who try not only to focus on money, 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 not only to focus on shareholders' rights, as Christine said, are not something where you are going to employ so many people, but also the part of the business has to be as to what are the kind of intangibles that you bring on the table which are going to help people out on the periphery. And I can tell you, this is where Tatas have differentiated. This is where some of the best companies have differentiated themselves. So they're not like anybody else next door, but they are the ones who are high on agenda, high on content. They have done it. They're mentoring people. They go to the colleges and schools. And I know this happening with so many businesses. Infosys, Tatas, Mahindras, they have all been spending a lot of their resources, part of the profit, on training and building the capacities of the people while they are in the college or the school. I met with Chris Gopalakrishnan, who after retiring is a good friend to me. He is now part of Kerala's Innovation Council. Sibulal of Infosys, Narayana Murthy, his son, Ajim Premji, Ratan Tata. I mean, there are umpteen number of examples which we need to leverage in order to be resilient and try and do our job in a much better way. So it is not either or, everything happening in parallel. But you have got to remember one thing, that whatever you do, today or tomorrow, it has to be seamless, and it has to be driven by passion, resilience, and with the hope that you're not going to fall once for all. If you fall, you should rise back again like a phoenix. Yep.
Quick reactions there on what?
I think I think both, there is no either or. I think either can happen first. And I think one very great example of this is Grameen Bank and how they set up female entrepreneurs across Bangladesh. The microfinance experiment in India also did the same thing, the self-help groups that came up. So what comes from economic empowerment or social empowerment, they can actually happen in parallel. It all depends on your family circumstances, circumstance of the society around you, and so on and so forth. And the very good thing is, for the last 15 years or 20 years, there's been some very positive messaging from the point of view of the government, okay, as far as also in terms of society at large. It'll take some time for societal values to change, but I think that once you have made a, you make certain inroads, people are a lot nicer than we think they are, okay, and they're genuinely helpful.
So more questions, and then we get some more reactions from the panelists. Any more questions? Yeah? Someone in the back there? Oh, right here. Sorry, there's one up here. Yeah, just get the audience mic up, please. Yeah. Try. This mic, Yeah, just use this one if you can.
Hello, I'm Vartana Pavaskar from the Bombay Stock Exchange. So my question was, we've seen, I mean, when we talked about all the discussions since morning, I think the change, if it has to come from our house, I mean, from how you do live. And media, in some sense, has a very big role to play in it. And we see that most of the serials or the kind of focus on family backgrounds, the family values, are, they try to support the, they try to bring up, keep up the traditional values, so to say, quote unquote, but at the same time show women as the more tolerant person or the women, and it's a very different portrayal that's been given out here. And on the society changing front, we're looking at various government initiatives, such as yours at various forums, the struggles which entrepreneurs and women have to face on the real life front. Now, how do we look at bridging this particular gap between the imagined world, which is actually reaching our household and affecting our families on a daily basis?
Srishti, will start with you, of course.
Thank you.
No, well, I've never done that kind of programming. All my programming has always been a little.
It's a
I'm
generic
just putting the
question.
disclaimer.
General comment from
And you know, the thing is, there is a certain responsibility, like we were discussing. Like they were saying as well, is that once you get to a certain position in your life, you should look around you and decide what you want to invest in. There are a lot of opportunities I have passed on personally. I know there are very few other television producers who don't take on stuff that they don't believe in. This is a very individual thing. I don't think any government can enforce any way of functioning. Sometimes it's in fact used as being gender neutral and doing whatever it takes to be the most successful you can be, and pandering to the lowest common denominator, pandering to the most basest actually of instincts, unfortunately seems to generate money. But I'm really optimistic that it's going to change as more and more people become aware of what's going on, and as a lot more let's say educated people come into the business, not looking at it just as numbers but also as a social responsibility. It is a responsibility of the maker on their own. We have some very successful role models who do this propagation of extremely damaging material, I agree. But then it's up to us also not to treat them as role models, because on a panel we'll be clapping and cheering because they're famous. But at the same time, when you look at the work that there is, because like it's their responsibility to put out work responsibly, it's also up to us who we choose to make into our heroes.
Nidhi, do you want to just put some
So yeah, I mean, just something that comes to mind with what you just said, Srishti, it is completely up to us. I come from a Agarwal family. I was one of 13 cousins, all of them were male. So I'm the only girl on my dad's side, interestingly. So never was I raised like a girl away from the boys. I was raised like one of the other children growing up in the house. Now, every woman, every mommy, mossy mummy in the house watches all these home serials. But trust you me, today come Women's Day, they've all called me up and told me in so many words that we're so proud you are representing our family. So no matter how much they see and what they consume in terms of entertainment, what they feel and how they've brought up the family is completely internal. So to your point, it is absolutely 100% up to us and the unit we maintain to encourage or to treat at parity, not anything special or lesser, any woman or any guy in that unit to go to the next level.
I think that if you look at the media per se, there's a lot of activism on the portrayal of women as sex objects. Okay. On the other hand, there isn't enough activism to deal with women being portrayed as doormats. Okay. Now, if enough of us write to various channels and say, can you show us at least one day in a week, one show in a week, an interesting program, an entertaining program, not a boring documentary, on successful women. And somebody had mentioned this about casual empowerment.
Yeah.
The casual empowerment coming in rather than saying, you know what, I'm a successful woman. Maybe it will work. I think that we should really get involved in what our channels are putting out from purely the consumer point of view.
You know, it's shocking that I have actually had to stop a show midway because he wanted to change the story. And they are okay with showing on television. They talk to you about the single TV household with this technically correct family or the traditional family viewing at the same time. So it's okay to talk about beating your wife, about raping your wife,
Yep.
about poisoning your sister-in-law's milk when she's pregnant. However, it's not okay if the woman earns more than the man.
Yeah.
So is that really us, or is that us feeding some strange belief about superiority of men?
True. Yeah, I'm going to take final comments because I'm given to understand we literally have 4 minutes to close this session and perhaps proceed for food. So Puran, I'll take your time first and ask you to kind of just close it to, what I'd said in the previous panel as well. While we don't necessarily need a Women's Day to have this conversation, how can we make this a little more impactful through the year with various partners, including representation from entrepreneurship, media, and so on?
I think you're right, Sally. I mean, it can't be one day in a year and then you come and do some conversation and then go home and forget everything. I think the whole charity must begin at home. If we have daughters or sisters or, our wives, whoever, I think we need to respect that thing right at the grassroots, which begins in each one of our homes. And I think that is the beginning of the shift of the mind from something else to something more positive. I think charity always begins at home. Then you come to work. So wherever you are, you need to really ensure that you are sensitive, you're not doing something which is harmful from the point of view of the women empowerment and gender equality. And in whichever position you are in, you try and affect that kind of an area in a more positive way. And the third thing that I personally believe is that wherever we are, we all have something or the other to contribute to, be it for women empowerment or gender equality. So whether you are in a position to mentor somebody to move on faster than some other women in the past have, or you were to sort of go to a business school and spend your own time and teach something or handhold some of those guys and girls, that is also very good. I think it has to be the part of our everyday thinking. It has to be the part of our everyday action. And it has to be the part of our overall thinking in a more natural way rather than anything forced being put on you and then you begin to respect a colleague who is working with you in your office or at home or whatever it is. I personally believe charity begins at home. Develop those values, respect them, and put them in a manner that you begin to walk the talk every day, every hour, every minute. Okay. I think that is what is going to really change the things they are as of now and thereby change the realities around us.
Would you be as optimistic, you think, as Puran? Do you think that really we are in a position to make that change a little swiftly towards gender parity in India?
I'm the eternal optimist, and I would like to believe that. And I'll tell you something that gave me a great deal of hope is my son opened his Instagram account. He's 13 now, so I think he was all of 11. And his bio said, singer, YouTuber, feminist. I never taught him that. 11 years old.
Yeah.
So if it can happen there, and I never sat down and gave him a talk that, this is what feminism is and this is equality. I guess, so if you do it, like Sir was saying, that, you do it in this, you put it in your daily lives, and women just believe in yourselves. You have to believe in yourselves. You have to think of yourself as genderless. You have to know that you will make mistakes, and if somebody doesn't see your potential, then they need to get their outlook checked.
Right. Didi, from what you said that you were the first girl after 13 boys in the family, I was very curious to see how the whole he for she piece worked for you, which would be an inspirational note for us to end your story on.
So none of my cousins, brothers, Tauji's, Mamaji's dad, none of them treat me any different from any guy. We're all children of the house. And so when it was time for me to go study and get my MBA out of Kellogg, the question wasn't, oh my God, are you married and therefore are you leaving home, right? It was all about what is the next step in your career and therefore what do you really need to go get. Finally, when I tried to, when I took that decision to become an entrepreneur, it became more of, okay, how can we help you do this better? What are you trading off? And please be completely sure of the trade-offs you'll be making. So they actually went out of their way to understand what it would mean for me rather than telling me how difficult it would be for me. So they made me more aware. I still till date stand on their shoulders altogether, right? There's no compromise of any sort on any level.
So that's important to have that kind of support by all means. Harini, the final word.
I'm the eldest in my family, and I was never treated as the eldest daughter. I was always treated as the eldest. Okay, and I think that's a huge, and my parents and my uncles and my aunts are a different generation. They were born during independence, so you can imagine how old they are. I think it's very important when you're bringing up kids, whether they're boys or girls. I think that entire thing of bringing them up to be gender neutral is very important. And telling them both that they can do things is also very important. And I think that the last thing which is very important today's day and age, especially when you're turning entrepreneur, is teaching them dignity of labor. No matter who you are. I mean, when I did my first enterprise, whether it was sweeping the office or whether it was making the tea, we did it all. And I think that's very important. We are usually used to having people pick up after us. You don't have that luxury when you're starting up on your own.
Yeah. Definitely not, and no matter what your background's been. Thanks very much. It's been great having this conversation with the panel, and I'm so glad that we could get such amazing speakers to come all the way to town to spend some time for this, as well as from Delhi, as did Nidhi and Pooran. Thanks very much. I'd really also like to thank our partners and Pooran for giving SheThePeople the opportunity, and to Karya for supporting our panel discussions today. Thanks very much for being a very interested audience. Thanks very much.
This is not working. We should also thank Sally for being with us today. I know how precious the time is, and I'm not really putting any value on the time that she has spent with us today. But we should all thank generously for Sally for having steered these two very interesting panels. Thank you, Sally, for being with us.
Let's have a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. And thank you to our audience as well for joining us at this special opening bell ceremony commemorating Women's Day. We're delighted to acknowledge a shared commitment towards ensuring that more women participate in the corporate sector and to achieving a gender-equal environment in business and society globally. We hope that the men in the audience will join the UN Women He for She campaign. Men can pledge their commitment to ending gender-based discrimination in their environments by signing up online at heforshe.org. And now, please join us for lunch. Thanks once again, and we hope you have a wonderful day ahead.